and it went on for a few weeks, and I interviewed Jessica just straight after that. And you know, it's challenging. I mean, this is what they think, and you know, the truth is, until you go through menopause, you probably could have another baby. You know what I mean? And who knows? So I think his idea is, he says he has so much respect for women when they come in and they just talk about that stuff that everyone's thinking about anyway. So I think that's really the best advice. Is you know, depending on where you are. If you want to talk about your work-life balance, you know, I do this so many hours and then I spend time with my family. I mean, the reality is a lot of these investors got children too, so they can relate. Yeah.
I wonder if it's might be a good opportunity to bring Anne in.
Sure.
And because she's recently been through this and she can
Great.
speak maybe a little bit to her
Yeah.
personal experience.
Yeah.
So everybody, this is Anne Vermonde.
Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm sorry I was running late.
Hi, Anne.
It's like running a startup. Nice to meet you. I saw all your presentations were great.
Oh,
so,
thank you.
yeah.
I just wanted to give another quote. Again, it's Lady Gaga. Some women choose to follow men and some women choose to follow their dreams. And if you're wondering which way to go, remember that your career will never wake up and tell you that it doesn't love you anymore. And one more point I'd like to talk about, and that's the sexual tension. No one spoke about this except Dave McClure. Of course, it's the most obvious fact. If you're a woman going in for investment, the fact is you are a woman and it's usually a man across the other side of the table. And no one spoke about it. It's the most obvious, but they didn't. So Dave actually brought it up immediately, thank God, and he was with a couple of his female founders. And I just kept going, thank you, thank you, thank you. And, you know, that's the reality. In any work situation, we've all been in, you know, corporate possibly positions where that whole sexual tension thing happens. Something I have to say, just from the psychological perspective, is that is just an energy, and that can be converted. I was a therapist and a coach for many, many years, and faced that in myself when I was younger. It doesn't have to be acted upon, and it is a form of creative energy. So when you're in a startup, if you've got a founder, often a co-founder, that sort of energy can come up. It can be mistaken if you're opposite sex or, you know, attracted to each other or whatever. But it doesn't have to be acted upon. And that's basically what he said. He said, you just got to acknowledge the fact that, you know, there's a man and a woman and you've got another agenda, you know. So you put that energy into something to help create the startup or the project, whatever it is that you're involved in. And, you know, it just makes it more juicy, really. I mean, that's what creative energy is all about, right? Now, sorry to be so blunt. What do they say about Aussies? That we're quite direct. But, you know, I was waiting for someone to talk about this because so many, I mean, Jessica and Jacqueline and her co-founder, they had lots of stories about VCs hitting on them. And, you know, it's just, I guess it's some people are less evolved or less conscious and just misuse their position, possibly, yeah?
Now, are we really talking about VCs or angel investors? Because VCs aren't they, you do them down the line when you've made a certain amount of money, you have a track record. Angel investors are really the ones that we need to be trying to address, right?
Not necessarily, no. These days, a lot of the big venture capital firms do seed investments. And so a seed investment can be just like an angel investment.
What do you call it?
The seed?
Yeah, actually, I raised a seed round.
There we go, and
there
I'll give you some
two
feedback.
VCs are participating, and the rest are angels. But 4 out of my investors are women.
Fabulous.
And then 3 guys, so there are men involved. Yeah. So I'm a co-founder of a startup called One Jackson. It's a crowdsourced indie design site for children's clothing. So we created a platform where indie designers can submit designs through design challenges, sort of like a Minted, which is another women-founded company in the city. A business school classmate of mine actually started that for paper goods, but basically design challenges, and then parents come to vote on the designs, and then we manufacture them. And earlier this year, I raised seed funding. You know, Pima had some great, I think, analysis from talking to lots of people, and I can probably just more share my specific story.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Most of the women that I raised money from, I had known for a long time, actually. Had not necessarily worked at companies they had funded, but had just built relationships over the years where they might call me about a portfolio company, or I might introduce them to people that I worked with. My background's all consumer technology. And so some of it was, a trusted network. And some of it for me also, I mean, if you ask anybody who knows me, like, I am not a typical aggressive, chest pounding, any of the stereotypes of who gets funded. But for me, I think it was understanding over time how these things work, right? What the dynamics are, and just being realistic about it. So some specifics. Nothing gets you funded like having other people interested. So it is very much, even for women funders, like, nothing is more interesting. It doesn't have to do with your numbers or your track record. At the very end, getting them across the finish line is about enough other people interested. And that's not good or bad, that's just a reality of the industry. So to the extent that you can shepherd those conversations so that at least two people are interested, it puts you in a much better position to both get funded as well as get funded from who you want. And once that happens, it's actually hysterical, because there were people I had never met who didn't, I didn't know what their seed fund was. And once it was out that there were a few people interested, I literally got emails and calls from strangers, which, to women is like ridiculous. I'm like, you don't even know what I'm doing. I could be mail ordering manure online. Like, you didn't even ask. Like, literally there were people who would email and say, I heard you got funding. I would like to fund it. And not to generalize, but all of those were guys, because somebody else had already made a decision. So at that point, it certainly was, back to, I think, what you crystallized is, you still have to be thoughtful about who you want to take money from, even if people are offering. I think it's still, when things get rough, and they do, usually every 15 minutes in running a startup, like, you do want to be able to pick up the phone and call somebody that has funded you and trust that they're going to give you the best advice. It might be tough. But, yesterday I have 3 kids. I was driving my 5-year-old to a birthday party at Pump It Up and was on the phone with an investor. And so I had to tell him, my youngest, who talks nonstop, okay, there's a book on your lap. Like, from here until the birthday party, you got to read your book. Mommy's on a very, very important phone call. Like, don't talk, which is like near impossible for him. And luckily, my investor's a mom as well. So if he had piped up, I could easily explain, I'm on the way to Pump It Up. But this is, important conversation. But I think those are the moments when you really have to decide, like, that person writing you the check. Are you going to be comfortable calling them up on a Sunday while driving to a birthday party, or, any of those situations? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How many did you find you had to submit to before you could get an actual answer or funding or?
Yeah, I did quite a few pitches. I'll also say, like, very realistically, there was interest, and I've been in consumer tech a lot. I'm not a programmer. The other thing that helped seal the deal is I recruited a co-founder that is an engineer. So I was very realistic about, what's the makeup of a team that's going to get funded. And then this is maybe a very female thing, if that also means that I have an equal co-founder, right? Kind of making that decision of, and we were building out a technology platform, so I knew that having a great technologist was going to be part of the pitch.
How many is quite a few?
I talked to, probably about 6. I talked to 6 sort of VCs through angels. Some of them, subsequent to the 2 leads funding, were, over the phone. Actually, one of the investors came referred, and I pitched over Skype for 30 minutes and thought, there is no way this is happening. Super nice guy. At the end of every conversation, and you probably know this when you pitch, everybody is super polite. That's great. You have a great idea. We'll get back to you.
They don't.
Yeah, universally, you're like, and having gone through them, and I generally am a person that can sort of sense, is this going to work, is it not going to work? Pitching over Skype, there is no feedback. So it's like, it was a 30-minute call, came through a referral. The next day he emailed and said, we're in, we think it's great. And actually he's been one of the most supportive people. So you sort of never know, but.
I think what you said too about the qualified networks, I think, starting to connect with investors, and a few investors said that, connect with them at networking events and start to know them before you're desperate for money. And Victoria from Wildfire App, I just heard they got sold.
Yep, to Google.
I saw that. She's great, a New Zealand origin. She said that's the best way to raise money, is not to be desperate for it.
Oh, yeah.
That basically, and the other thing is they're lemmings. Investors are lemmings, and even some of the investors say that. They'll all go to the same crap table and throw their money down. So, once there's one person interested, boom, you'll have more.
What were you saying about Skype? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying I had to pitch one of the investors over Skype.
So
they were
Skype
in
is
Boston.
okay for doing
Yeah, Skype, phone call.
But only if they agree to Skype.
Huh?
Not all of them would agree
Not
to
all of
that.
them. Yeah, a couple of them on the East Coast actually suggested Skype.
So I think, could you give us some examples of what good networking functions would be here locally to go to? The names of networking
Well,
functions?
Dave McClure does have a conference. I don't know, someone spoke about Dave.
Yeah.
He's local?
He's down in Mountain View, but he has a mom, like an umbrella of mom entrepreneurs.
And he does startup. I think he's still involved. One of the really good ones is startup to startup. He has a bunch of events. Okay. But I would actually say, the events I think are good. The other is just even through your own network, via LinkedIn, just see who's at companies. If you have friends at startups or even companies that are a little bit bigger but that are funded by some of the folks, that a warm introduction is usually the best way to meet somebody. And they'll always take, the thing about VCs and angels is they will always take a meeting from a warm introduction, even if it's a half-hour coffee. And it's probably good just to get to know them even before you have an idea, or even ask about the things that they're seeing if you think it's a goal to start something. If you've got an idea already, bounce it off of them over coffee.
Can you talk about the process of getting that first pitch call or meeting set up? Before you have anyone who's interested, how did you find that first person that was willing to take a meeting with you?
Yeah, so in my case, because I'd known folks for a long time, the first person I pitched, who is the lead investor, I was on a board of a startup with her, and I had known her for a long time. So that was a very easy call of, hey, I think I'm going to do this. I want your feedback. And in her case, I met with her first, and then I met with herself and two other partners that are in their commerce area. A lot of the VCs, they'll sort of specialize in different areas.
Domains,
yeah, and so I met with the three of them, and then I pitched the full partnership. In the other case of one of my funders, I just met with her first, and then I just met with the people in commerce because it was seed. So, but I will say, be really thoughtful about whether or not you want to take VC at first, or you can bootstrap, or you can get one individual angel to fund, because the longer you have to, Dave talks about this, the whole lean startup model, the longer you have to prove out a minimum viable product, the better I think it is for your chances to get funded. But I also think as women, then you've got data, and to the extent that from, depending on how confident you are of something, the best way is to sort of prove to yourself that there's something there, right?
Yeah, Victoria said that too from Wildfire App. She said if you get, a minimal viable product and you've got
That's
users,
great, 'cause that was my second question.
you don't have any
What should
problem
you
in
build
selling.
before you pitch?
Yeah, and it doesn't.
You guys having an MVP?
Yeah, if you're not a coder, it's okay. Today, there's so many free things. If you have an idea, there's a free product called Launch Rock that you can put up a landing page that just talks about, that you just talk about an idea. You say, you get people excited. You say, we're going to be X for Y, whatever your idea is, sign up for email. And they have viral loops built in, so you can do things like, hey, the more Facebook friends you invite to this, the more tweets that you have, you get higher up on the list, right? And you can buy Facebook ads or Google ads, send them to that, email it out to your friends, build up an email list, and even survey them and figure out like, what do these customers want? Like that in and of itself could be a minimum viable product. Like going in and saying, I've got 5,000 people waiting for this product, right? And 70% of them said they were willing to pay this amount to buy it when I launch. There's so many good free tools out there to test out an idea. And that also just, again, gives you more information to put into a pitch. Throw up a blog. Blogs now you can do a widget inside that takes payment, right? I mean, they look great and they're free. I used to work at a company called SurveyMonkey. They own a form builder called Woofu. You can put up a form that literally takes payment. So you could start, having people pre-order something. Worst comes to worst, you return their money and you say we didn't have enough, but you could go in and say 50 people are pre-ordering this, right? So I just need a little more money and I'm going to ship my product.
And it's interesting too, I interviewed Janae Ringelman from Indiegogo. She's a co-founder of Indiegogo, and in those days she was saying that there were 40% women on that site raising money, basically. And I know her founder, before they co-founded, also had a lot of women. So there are other ways to raise funds if you don't want to go directly to investors.
I was going to say I found my co-founder as well because I'm not from here. I found my lead developer on startuppers.com. And I don't know if anybody else has gone there, but I put it in captioned, I can't pay you. But if you are interested in helping children, let me know. And I ended up with 12 applicants.
Yeah.
And it was, and I found, he's 46, he's former Yahoo web developer, he's done tons of contract work, he's with Sun Microsystems, and he just loved my topic, so he's making my MVP for free, quote unquote, but there's some other things that you can do that's creative without you having to pay your money up front. And I found him 4 weeks after arriving here. And so we're already halfway through the prototype, the MVP built, and it'll be done in 2 weeks. So there's people out there that I was surprised I never,
It's called Startuppers?
Yeah, with 1 P.
And of course, if you go to investors, early in the piece, which Dave obviously tries to get you not to do, you lose a lot of your equity, basically.
What?
You would lose equity if you get money from investors.
Oh, what does a good pitch include? I mean, how do you know, what does a pitch have in it?
Sequoia Capital actually has a great outline on their site.
Sequoia?
Capital, yep. I think if you look for, they literally put a pitch outline. Not everybody has to have all those components, but it's a great outline.
Also, I've got a virtual training, which is up on Udemy, and it's also up on my site, called Pitch Perfect. And it's meant to go for 4 weeks, but you can do it in your own time. And it walks you through not just the deck and the pitch that you've got to have completed, but also the process within yourself if you have any lacks of confidence or areas that need to be beefed up. That basically walks you through that personal part as well as the physical product, and you get feedback from 2 investors at the end. And I'm going to give a 10% discount. So Stephanie will have the code you'll have to put in if you want to access that.
And Dave has some good templates, right? Dave
on Dave's advice is always great.
On SlideShare, if you search on SlideShare for Dave, and they're funny too.
Yeah. Sorry, I think this girl lady.
You kind of alluded to this earlier, but men seem much more comfortable asking for money.
So yes. So a lot of people, a lot of people said that women are afraid to ask for money. Don't know what that's about, but anyway, if you are, then basically you have to be aware of that. I don't know, it's a pride thing. I still have no idea what that's about, but a few people did speak about it, and of course if you're going for investment you really need to work through that blockage, because that's what you're doing, you're asking for money.
I want to ask, and when you found your co-founder, how did you like decide what to share with them? As far as 50-50, did you decide to do that?
I had worked with him before in a couple of different situations, so knowing what we were going to build, I mean, well, one, you know, I picked somebody that a lot of VCs will say this, and there's a lot of stuff out there that's like, here's the to-do list of how to do it. You can read those, but I think you have to figure out for yourself. But one thing that somebody, I can't remember which blog had it, but it said, you know, find somebody that's around the same life stage as you, just because it can be a mismatch. Like, one, I think it's pretty hard to go find a 20-something, you know, usually out of Stanford, who's an engineer, that, you know, that I would be able to kind of recruit who wanted to be a co-founder to start something that was like indie design kids clothes. So I was pretty realistic about like, okay, so my co-founder's a dad of two. You know, we've both been in startups and bigger companies. He had a company that had just been sold to Google. So definitely my conversation, knowing that he was also leaving, you know, a good amount of vesting on the table, we just had a pretty open conversation of like, hey, here's the things I'm good at, here's the things I need. And in our case, we did make the decision to be kind of real equal co-founders. And I think it's a great decision to do. For me, it was a great decision to do that because, you know, doing a startup can be really lonely, you know, like because a lot of it is you have to make a ton of decisions with very little information all the time on a daily basis. And so having somebody that you truly trust, especially when the times are hard, that, you know, that really sees themselves as an equal and doesn't start getting anxious and nervous when you hit the bumps is, at least for me, was very important.
However, I would add, I've got a thing against age bias, and I had a few conversations on the net, on blogs over the years, where young people have said, oh, you never work with an older person. Well, I'm an older person, but I actually work all the time with 20-year-olds, and have for many years. So I think age is a product of your mind, and you know, we're all different ages in our minds, and I think I agree with you. You have to be compatible with your co-founder because you're going to have to work through a whole lot of shit, as well as some good times. Yeah, right? And just like a marriage partner, you don't want it to like fall apart as soon as the shit hits the fan. So yeah.
How involved in pitching was your technical co-founder?
He was pretty involved. I did a couple of the pitches first myself as I was talking to him. I talked to a couple people I had worked with before to find a technical co-founder. So I did a few pitches on my own, and then once he signed on, I did the rest of the pitches with him. The Skype one I did by myself. In my den with the door closed and telling the kids, don't knock on the door while I'm pitching.
Which they didn't listen to.
They've been pretty good. My youngest is 5, and so I've got an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. So the older ones, you know, when I have my, like, I've got to get on the phone face, they usually are pretty good.
You mentioned, you know, the fact that, like, some men might not get our female ideas, right, our mom-oriented ideas. And so how would you address that? I mean, we've been tending to only pitch men who have kids that we can, you know, we can kind of tell they have kids and stuff. And that obviously cuts out a lot of the market. I mean, should we continue that, or do you feel like there's... No,
definitely, but some of those men go home to their wives to find out if that's a viable model that you've just pitched to them. You know, one of the greatest things is go to a female VC. And as I said, there's a page on my site with a whole lot of profiles.
But you said there's just fewer of them, right? There's more female entrepreneurs than there are female VCs.
Yeah.
So, you know, to address the difference in numbers, right?
Sure.
We'll have to go to some men. And
Sure.
so if we're going to go to men, have you found something to say, like, you know, should we continue this practice of only going to men with kids? You know,
well, if you wanted to extend that you know, you could check out all the men on my site, all the VCs I've interviewed on my site. They're all women friendly because the ones that weren't didn't let me come in. You know, I didn't get any interview.
The other thing I might say is look at companies that either are similar or focused on a demographic that have gotten funded, and see who those men are, because they may or may not have kids, but they clearly, you know, believed in an idea And there's quite a few of them, like Kiwi Crate and Citrus Lane. There's been a bunch of kind of commerce focused on moms and kids, companies that are both angel and VC funded, that just look at who those investors are, because they've already signaled, right, that they're interested in this
And they know the market.
Right.
And then how would you deal with, like, say, we happen to be a mom-oriented services company.
Okay.
So if they funded another mom-oriented
Yeah,
services
that's
company,
what you have-
sometimes it's too close, right? Then
Yeah.
we can be competitors and
Yeah.
not funded.
So you're going to have to be careful of
Yeah.
that. There's no way around it. At the moment, there's no real easy way through that. Yeah. It's a matching process, and you just have to pull out the points. In that Pitch Perfect program I've got, there is I put a questionnaire together, and you can actually then go through each of the VCs, and you can tick off. And the ones that score highest are the ones you could go to. I think there's two camps. One camp says you should go and pitch to as many VCs as you can, and the other camp says no, go for ones that are much surer bet. From my standpoint, I don't want to waste my time, and I don't want to waste theirs. So I would tend to veer towards the camp of like getting a really good qualified list of investors and then approaching them, rather than just going to everyone in the valley. And you get a lot of practice that way, but it's a big time waster. Okay, we've only got 5 minutes.
Yeah, no one's talked about it. So there's an organization called Golden Seeds, which
Yep.
is angel investing. They're looking at, I think
Only for women.
only for women. I mean, well, I think it's 85%. I mean, so it either needs to be woman founded, co-founded, or there needs to be a woman as part of the C-suite.
Yeah.
Great organization, and they will let prospective investees sort of come in and sit in and watch some of the speed rounds to just see how the presentations go. It is a wide variety of
Yes, it's very good.
companies that they're looking at, and they're really looking for good, scrappy, good ideas.
And there's also a couple of social
Golden
venture companies. So there's Investors Circle that runs a fair, a virtual fair that they always ask me to promote, and also Pipeline Fellowship, which train female angels and also invest in female-based social ventures. A lot of things like startups that are actually focusing on making life better for families and children and women. Obviously, I have that social context, so definitely I'd look at those. And Pipeline Fellowship have their conference on the 5th of October here in San Francisco, and I'm moderating an angel panel there.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of coming up with your company's valuation when you were first pitching people? And also, sort of in tandem with that, did you think about doing a friends and family round, or did you initially just think, I'm going to just start pitching, and then it went so well that you went for the VC angel money? Could you talk a little bit about both of those?
Yeah, definitely. We did raise, we did have a couple of convertible notes first before we got the VC funding, and they weren't from friends and family. I mean, they were from friends, but not family. They were people that were professional investors. And this may be a difference between women and men, and I think there have been studies on it that men are more willing to either get like a second mortgage or ask their friends for money. I happen to be in the fortunate position that some of my friends I had worked with over the years actually had angel funds. And so I felt more comfortable asking people that were professional investors. So we had a convertible note. In terms of pricing, both on pricing and term sheets, I would just say, it's good to do your research and just try to talk to other entrepreneurs, as well as I have a few good friends that are EIRs, entrepreneurs in residence, who see a lot of the term sheets, just to understand what the market is, like what currently companies like yours are raising on what terms, so that that you're smart about what market rates are, so you know if you're in the right band. But it also depends a lot on what your company is. Like, do you need to invest in inventory? How much technology do you need to build to make a decision on how much you want to raise? Like, certainly raising a seed round on a convertible note, which means it's not priced, can be beneficial to you, right, to prove something out.
And one more point, because I think we have to finish now, is you also should be very careful if when you're raising seed money, if you get it from some of the big VCs, because there are ulterior reasons why they might be investing in a seed round, and it could preclude a Series A or Series B. A lot of people are hitting that problem now. Because so many VCs now are involved in seed funding.
Yeah.
And there are ulterior motives and other things that you don't normally see. And if they pull out, you won't get your Series A or Series B. So you have to be really careful about that seed round. So I just leave you with that warning, and thank you for all your feedback. It was fabulous.
Of course. Yeah, no.